All right. Good morning, almost afternoon. We want to thank you for joining us today to talk about reconciling for the newly elected county recorders. Just a few housekeeping things again. We are recording today's session, so it will be online if you'd like to view at a later point in time. Anything that was recorded last week and before, all those recordings are up on our website. They are right underneath the packets of this information that we're providing in these sessions. I've also included the packets link in the chat box for today. So if you don't have that packet, you can click on that link and it will take you straight to that. Other than that, I think we're going to get started. I'm going to turn it over to Lori to talk to you about reconciling.
Everybody's favorite topic. Well, maybe just Ricky's and mine, but we'll go with everybody. I might need to switch them.
Yes.
Oh, come on. Play settings. Swap it out.
And you got two boxes. Oh, there you go.
I lost your box. I don't know where it went.
You're good.
Okay. Okay, so today's topic is reconcilement. We have done this with all of the newly elected officers because reconciling is extremely important. We can't emphasize that enough. It's one of the control activities that you do to make sure that your information is accurate and complete, and that your reports reflect that. So again, we can't emphasize enough how important it is that you do your reconcilement, that you reconcile like your cash collections each day to your report of or your receipt register or your duplicate receipts, that you reconcile each month between your bank statements and what your record balance shows. And again, and we'll say it probably several times through here, if you do not keep on track with your reconciling, then little things become much bigger and much harder to find. And so what could be, a 10 or 15 minute chore for recorders, could turn into hours. So stay on top of your reconcilement, and I'll have our information at the end. If you have issues, always don't hesitate to call us and talk to us about it. So why do we reconcile? Well, the first thing is the statute requires you to do so. Indiana code that I've listed on here, 5-13-6-1E, states that all local investment officers shall reconcile at least monthly the balance of public funds as disclosed by the records of the local officers with the balance statements provided by their respective depositories. So that's banks and investments that you have. Used to be, you always had to wait for your bank statement to get to you. Most of you probably have online banking, so you can access that account information anytime you want. And so you can certainly reconcile more often than monthly if you choose to do so, just to stay on top of it. And again, the less time between, if you're reconciled and the less time between that period of time and your next reconcilement, the easier it is to find if there's any variances or any errors that need to be corrected. But you have to do it at least monthly. We have had instances where a bank account has had fraudulent activity, and we'll probably talk about this a little later as well in this presentation. And in this situation, someone fraudulently took money out of the bank, someone totally out of the county used check schemes to take money out of the account. But the person, the elected officer over that account didn't reconcile each month, and in fact didn't even open their financial statements or check online. And so by the time they realized that this had been done, it was too late to go to the bank and say these checks were fraudulent and have the money restored. So the county took a loss on that. And all of that could have been prevented simply by looking at those bank statements each month and reconciling. I think for recorders, I mean, it may be less of a risk for you, but it's still a risk. And a lot of fraud schemes start with small amounts to see if you do detect it, and then if not, it goes to bigger amounts. So if you are looking at your statements each month, you should be able to find these. You immediately should be able to notice if there's money being taken out of your account that you don't know about. So every month, reconcile. If you have issues where you're not variances, you're not coming back to, talk to us. We'll deal with that, but don't let that prevent you from not doing at least checking the bank statements, checking the stuff that you can, and we'll talk about the steps you take when you reconcile, at least doing all of those every month. When we audit, we are going to be looking for monthly reconcilements, and in fact, you have to upload those, and Ricky went over that when she talked about the gateway uploads. So failure to reconcile can also result in an audit finding. So 3 very good reasons of why you reconcile. So reconcile, what does that mean? It really means make one account consistent with another. So you have 2 records. You have your financial records, and then you have your bank's financial records. Every transaction in your office, every receipt, every payment should be posted to your records. There should not be any transactions that do not run through your financial records. Okay, so at any given point in time, your financial records should show a summary of what has been collected, what has been dispersed, and what remains in your account, in your bank account, or what funds you're still holding on to. You are required to keep financial records for your office because you collect fees for recording, making copies, and other services. Those fees are turned over to the county, but however, with the exception of a few offices that do remit their fees daily, you have a separate bank account and you remit your fees once a month, and you are responsible for all of those collections that you have received in the month that are sitting in your account until you turn those over to the county. Your financial records should be as accurate and complete as possible, and again, should have a record of every receipt and every disbursement, as well as a balance of all the collections that you're holding that you haven't yet remitted. Your day collection should be posted each day, and any payments that you make should be posted as well to your record balance, to your ledger. The same time that you're tracking all of your receipts and any disbursements, the bank is keeping track of your account because it's one of many accounts that they hold. And they send out statements to all of their account holders, usually monthly, that reports their records of the activity in your account for the month. But the bank statement is the bank's records. It's not your record. It's the bank's record. Reconciling your records to the bank records helps support the accuracy of your financial records and the amount that you're holding in your account. But the banks can, and they do make mistakes. And we talked a little bit just a few slides ago about the fraudulent activity where something cleared the bank account that shouldn't, that was not your check. They can, and there are other errors that can be made to them. And you need to get those corrected immediately. As soon as you note them, you need to get to the bank and get those corrected. And there could be errors in your financial records. But when you're looking at what the bank's showing, if it doesn't match what you're showing, that gives you a chance to look at your financial records and make any corrections if there were posting errors. Okay. This is a copy of the prescribed form for the fee and cash book. We've gone over this in an earlier session. This is the manual ledger form. Most of you probably use software to account for your collections, but if you are using a manual form, this is the prescribed form for that. We usually almost always go over the manual forms because we don't have great knowledge on every single software that's being used. Every county has the right to choose their own software, and so different softwares are available. But if you understand how it's supposed to work in the manual system, you can apply that same theory then to your financial software and make sure it's doing the same thing. So when you receive a payment for recording, you will issue a receipt and you post that receipt. You would post the date the fee was collected, the receipt amount, and the payee, as all it's shown here on this manual form. The fee itself is then posted to the appropriate category. By posting to these categories, it helps you develop your report of collection. So how much is going to, deeds, how much is going to go to the corner perpetuation fund, how much is going to go to the general fund, and the categories that you've collected those in. This is from the manual, so these are old fees, so don't go by the fees in here, but it gives you an example of how that should be posted. And the other thing I wanted to point out on the fee and cash book is the very last section, and that is disbursements. And I think we're hearing that there may be some question on how disbursements are being posted, but you are required to post your disbursements to your ledger. And it's possible for your county that the only disbursement you have is a check you write once a month to the county treasury along with your report of collections. And that is the most common disbursement, and that may be the only one. But it still has to be posted because you have to keep that balance. In order to keep that balance, you have the total amount collected, total amount dispersed, the amount remaining. Okay. Even though your bank account is kind of a clearing account because everything you receive, you're going to turn around and turn over to the county, at no point is your bank account zero, because even at the point that you're writing the check for last month's collections, you still have this month's collections in there. So you've got to have the full picture, what has been receipted in and what has been dispersed out. And it's possible that there could be other disbursements than the one check to the county. If you do refunds, for example, you might have more than just one check. And so you want to make sure that your ledger shows all of your disbursements. And just as an added note, since you're newly elected, if you're not familiar with the office, all of the operating costs for your office are paid by the claims you submit to the auditor's office. So you have a general fund budget. You have a perpetuation fund that you use to pay for costs. The disbursements for your operating funds come from that. So the money that you collect, you're just going to turn around and pay to the county. That's why you have the one check to the county and possibly refunds. But you're not paying any other expenses out of your fee and cash book. So keep that in mind as well. As I said a little earlier, if you stay on top of your posting and reconciling, this becomes a very routine duty. It doesn't take a whole lot of time. The problems we see are when the records haven't reconciled for months or in some offices years. And then finding the errors over that time is exponentially more difficult. Multiple errors can net against each other, so it's hard to find a particular error. If one is positive and one is negative, and so they net to an amount between the two, then it's very hard to go back through the records and look for them. And the further back you have to go, the more records you're looking through. So when you're taking office, you want to look for your November 2020 reconcilement. Hopefully it's done and it's complete, and you're reconciled. And if so, when you do your December reconcilement, you will know that any variances that have occurred would have occurred in December. So you're really just focusing on your December transactions and the December bank statement. It should be easy to find any differences between the two reports, okay? Even though you weren't keeping the records in December, you have the records for December. And so you can look at those and see if there's any differences. If you find out you were not reconciled to the end of November, your reconcilement process will be more difficult. But focus on the most recent month, December transactions, if those have not been done. Work out any corrections for that month. If you have issues that you can't resolve, then contact Ricky and I. We can help you work with you to try and get your reconcilement complete. We can't do it for you, but we can help you brainstorm. We can help you look for things. You need to give us details, either send us copies of things. If you just email and say, I think I'm off, and throw out a number, we can't help with that. We need to know exactly. We have to have the same source documents you are. What's your record balance show? What is your record transactions, and what are your bank statements show? It's not a big hopefully, for most recorders, this isn't as big as an issue as it is for treasurers who may have, 10 bank accounts that they're looking at, or even clerks who have large amounts of money that they're holding in trust. For recorders, it should be, like I said, it's pretty close to a clearing account, so you should be able to reconcile fairly easily. Your first step is to make sure all of your postings for the month are complete and accurate. Each day, your cash drawer should be counted and reconciled to the receipt register for that day, and a duplicate deposit or deposit report in your software, however you do that, should be completed. This should not be done by one person, but you should have internal controls in place with the built-in segregation of duties. So, for example, if one employee counts out the cash drawer, another maybe reconciles the report and recounts the cash drawer to make before they prepare the deposit, and then maybe that first person or third person would take the deposit in to the bank. The cash change should be held out for the next day, so you want to count that out when you're doing your cash counts out of your drawers. If the drawer is over or short, you want to make a documentation of that amount because that's going to have to be dealt with. You are required by statute to make deposits daily. During COVID, this may have been relaxed by county policy due to everything that was going along with that. And so we did say we would not take audit exception if you had a county policy to deposit twice a week. I don't know if that's still in effect as, businesses are going back into, being opened more than they were, but you can still have issues where maybe your bank your branch is closed down because of COVID issues. So make sure you look at that policy and make it at least twice a week. But once that policy is over, the statute is actually, you have to make it daily. Okay, you need to document any payments made by electronic means. So if you have credit and debit payments, they could be receipted, like someone's in the office making a credit card payment, or you could, if you have electronic access, they may be making it online when they're accessing the records. And these payments need to be reconciled to the actual deposits in the account. Obviously, when they make the payment, you're going to receipt it, but you're not going to receive that payment maybe for a day or two. So you have to track to make sure that those deposits actually hit the bank. All of your receipts should be posted daily to the cash book. For most software, as you enter the information for the receipt, it'll get posted. There may be some that do batch, where they just might do a batch of all your receipts for the day, and then you have to go through the process of posting that batch. So you want to make sure that all of your collection procedures, whatever your software requires, are being done each day. And I'll go back to the daily deposits. If you have less than $500 in collections, you do not have to make a daily deposit. The statute does allow you to hold those back until you have at least 500 or more. So when you get your bank statement, your first step then is to take your duplicate deposits or your deposit register, your deposit slips, trace those to posting in the bank statement. So you want to line up and make sure everything you thought you deposited actually is credited to your bank account, that it hit the bank. If the deposit was made at the end of the month or late in the month, it may not be posted to the bank yet. So you want to make a list of those, and those are called deposits in transit. That list is carried forward to the subsequent bank statement, so you make sure that if it doesn't show up on this, on January's bank statement, that it should be right there on February's, because it should be only a day or two delay in that. Okay, and you want to total your deposits in transit because you're going to need that number for your bank reconcilement because that's a timing difference. Okay, the second step is to trace all of the checks written from your check register or your check duplicates to a clearing in the bank. And again, you may only have one check, which should be very, very simple and easy to do. Any checks that have not cleared should be added to your outstanding checklist. If you are writing one check to the county, that should not be an issue for you. Those should clear within a day or two because they have to make daily deposits as well. If you are refunding money, then the person or the company that you're refunding to may hold on to those checks a little longer, and so that those have to be added to your outstanding checklist. Then you're going to check for deposits from credit card or debit card transactions and update your list. You have a list of the payments that you accepted by check, by credit or debit, and you want to cross-reference and check those off that those have now hit the bank. And then you're going to look for any differences between your records and the bank statement where the deposit's not the same, and make note of those. Did checks clear for a different amount than what you recorded? Were transaction posted to your account that you don't have posted? And again, if there's a transaction on the bank statement that you didn't post, determine is that a posting error on your part or did the bank make an error? Any bank error should be reported to the bank immediately for correction. Most banks have a set period of time after which they will no longer make corrections, so you want to make sure you submit your request before that time is up. And we talked about it earlier. That's what happened with the officer I was telling you before. They had not checked their bank their bank statements for several months. And so by the time they brought it to the bank's attention, it was past that time period for the bank to correct it. So the county ended up having to accept that loss. So now you've checked all of the deposits and you've accounted for any deposits in transit. You've checked and made sure all of your checks have cleared, or if there's any outstanding checks being carried forward. So what else do you look for? This slide shows some of the common variances you can check for. It includes the deposits in transit and the checks. But another one is interest. If your account earns interest, the bank is going to credit that to your account, but you're not going to have posted that because you didn't know that they had credited to your account until you actually get the bank statement. And the opposite of that, if the bank charges fees, bank fees for yours, that's the opposite, kind of like interest, where they're going to take money out of your account for whatever bank fees they charge you. It is possible to net your bank fees against your interest if the interest is higher, and just report the net interest. However, if the bank fee is larger than the interest, or you don't earn interest and you have to pay a bank fee, that's going to operating expense. So you're going to have to file a claim against the general fund for those bank fees so you can deposit them back into your bank account to restore your balance. The bank fee, again, would be an operating cost, so it would be posted to your operating budget. And there's some other variances you need to think about. If the bank notifies you that a check was not accepted or dishonored, if it was an insufficient funds check, that's going to be a variance. Your records show a receipt for that amount. However, the bank didn't accept the check, so they're not going to show that credited to your account. So again, that's the difference between the two, and you need to note that. If you have debit or credit transactions that have been receipted but not deposited, those need to be noted, the total amount of that, because that's going to be a timing difference as well. Again, if there are posting errors on your records that would cause a variance, and any bank errors that would cause a variance on the bank, between the bank and your ledger balance, you need to note those, and those need to be corrected. I included a sample bank reconcilement in your packet that shows how some of the variances work. I made up all the numbers, so they don't tie to anything, just to illustrate how a bank reconcilement works. This is not a prescribed form, but it does illustrate how to document these variances. And I'm going to go over it at the end after we've talked about this. I'm kind of going to go over it and highlight where these variances go and how you deal with them, just to show you how that works. So when we're looking at the bank reconcilement, you start with the balance as it appears on the bank statement or statements. You should just have one, I would think, one bank statement. Then you're going to apply the identified variances. So your deposits in transit, you're going to add those to that bank balance, because that's money you've receipted in that they haven't credited yet. So you know it's in transit, it's going to be added. You're going to subtract out your I'm doing it backwards. You're going to subtract out your deposits in transit and add in your outstanding checks so that you're adjusting that bank balance back. Again, remember, if there are bank errors or posting errors on your records, these need to be corrected. We have actually seen posting errors carried for months. There is absolutely no reason to carry an error past the months it's identified. Once you've identified that an error has occurred, make the correction. As long as you can identify each variance, you are considered reconciled. However, if you are plugging numbers or you have one large unidentified variance, you're not reconciled. So even for recorders, if you come to a number and it's, we don't balance by, $345. If you cannot identify what makes that $345, you are not reconciled. If you can say it's because of this, this, and this, and you can support that, then you are reconciled. I hope that is kind of clear. During the audit, what the field examiners will do is reperform some of your reconcilements. They will trace those variance to source documents. They're not going to just take your word for it. They're going to ask to see your outstanding checklist and do some testing on that. They're going to ask to see any deposits in transit and trace those to where they were actually credited by the bank. They may look for your documentation on your NSF checks or your debit and credit transactions. So if you do have unidentified variances, that can result in a finding depending on how big the variance is. So it's very important that you keep track of this and that you identify your variances and you make any corrections that are needed. So again, remember, when you're reconciling, you're agreeing the two accounts to each other. So the answers are there. There's just the two accounts you're looking at. If the accounts have been out of balance for a long period of time, it's a lot harder to discover. But given enough time and effort, it can be done. There may be a cost benefit to that. You may decide that if it's 5 years, that it's not worth your time to go back through 5 years of bank statements and 5 years of your ledger to figure out where the mistake was, depending on how, the dollar amount of that mistake. I'm just saying that if you wanted to do it, you could find it. It's in there somewhere because you have two accounts that you're trying to agree. So you can find where they are different. If you have software that reconciles, don't rely on that software. Make sure you understand the reconcilement, and you could do it yourself outside of that, starting with that beginning bank balance, adding your, adjusting for the variances that you have, and coming down to your record balance. And we'll show this when we go over the bank reconcilement. So your cash book should be complete. It should include, and that's including any electronic cash books. All of your transactions need to be recorded. This includes all your collections, all of your disbursements. You have to post your disbursements as well as your collections. There should always be a current balance that you can reconcile to. Your balance would consist of any collections not yet remitted to the county. So it's probably just 1 month's collections, 1 month or partial months given at any point in time. Okay, unless you have prepaid accounts. We'll talk about that in a little bit, which would be in your bank account. That would be a difference. And again, remember, the bank statements are the bank's financial records. You're reconciling to them, but those bank statements are not your financial records. And again, you're pretty fortunate for your office that reconciling for recordeds is pretty straightforward and uncomplicated, but it needs to be done every month. And if you don't, you still can have reconciling issues. So make sure you stay on top of that. So if your office accepts electronic payments, you need to have accounting for these payments. So you're going to issue a receipt when the payment is made, whether that person is making it in person or it's received online through your enhanced access, for example. You still need to receipt the payment in when you are receiving the payment. Okay, that means when they're authorizing it, when they're actually making the payment. Again, this will not be part of your deposit for that day, as the money is deposited electronically into your account. So it's not going to be in your cash drawer. It's not going to be part of your till. So that's not going to agree with your deposit slips. That's going to be a variance, a timing issue between what's in your cash drawer and what you're depositing, and what your record of collections is for that day, your total receipts for the day. So you need to have a separate means for tracking those to make sure that all of those payments do actually hit the bank. And again, errors can be made on that. Somebody may post a payment, it doesn't hit, so you need to track those and go after those payments if you're not receiving them. Most of the time, they're going to be deposited within a day or two of when the payment has actually been authorized. Next month we're going to be discussing receipting, so we'll talk a little bit more about report of collections. But remember, until the money is deposited into your account, you are not going to remit it. So if you're doing your report of collections at the end of the month and someone's paid by electronic means at the end of the month and it hasn't hit your bank account, don't include it in that month's report of collections, even though it's receipted in that month, because you don't have the money to remit yet until it hits your bank. Okay, well, we talked about in December, we went over some of things like, some general overview of things, and we talked about the statutes. Indiana Code 36211 is the statute for recorders. And in subsection 9, it states that you are not liable for dishonored checks. So if you accept a dishonored check, you're not responsible for that, but you are responsible to follow through and trying to get the fees that are due the county, just as you're responsible for safeguarding the funds that you're already holding. So you do need to follow procedures. You need to have procedures established to follow up on NSF checks. So in effect, if you receive an NSF check, they have not paid you. You've receipted it in, you took the check, but when the check was dishonored, that means you never actually received the payment. So you have to have procedures in process to follow up on that. Technically, what we would say is at that point that you haven't received it, you need to void out that receipt because you have not actually received the money. So that should not be part of your collections for the month. Okay. Then follow up with the person who gave you the dishonored check to try to get those fees collected. We understand that sometimes if it's somebody you're working with a lot and this is not normal for them, you may call them up and they say, oh yeah, I'll have that money down to you tomorrow. I'll get that corrected. Then it's okay to hold on to it and wait for them to bring the money in, but don't wait too long because you don't want to be carrying this really past the month that it occurs. Within 90 days, a dishonored check should be referred to the prosecuting attorney for collection. And that's in Indiana Code 36-1-8-13, which tells elected officials they do have to turn over a dishonored check within the 90 days. Until you have voided out the receipt, and like I said, if maybe you're waiting, they said they'll be in the next day or a couple days to bring that in. Until you void it out, it is a reconciling item because you're showing on your records that you received this payment where the bank never got the money because the check was dishonored. So that's a difference between what the bank shows and what you show. That's a reconciling item. When the subsequent payment is received, you need to look at what you've done. If you voided out the receipt, then you're going to need to receipt it in again because you're going to need it back to your records. If you have not voided out the receipt, do not receipt it in again. You've already got it on your records. You just need to deposit it to the bank, make a note on your deposit slip or with your deposit slip to show that this was a collection on an NSF check that had previously been recorded. So make sure you're looking at what you've done and what the correction is so that you can keep your records and your bank balance and your bank records in balance. Prepaids. Okay, to start off this whole discussion, Statement of Accounts does not recommend the use of prepaid accounts or accounts receivable for recorder fees. However, we don't take exception to prepaids. If they're done properly, we probably would to accounts receivable, especially if you're not collecting on those accounts. And the reason is, if you look at the statute again, we're in 36-11, which is the recorder statute. In subsection 6A, it states that the recorder may demand the recorder's fees before entering and recording an instrument. And in the following section, it says when the recorder has received an instrument for record, the recorder may return it to the person who presented it only after the fee for recording the instrument has been paid. So statute is expecting you to collect that fee before you perform the service. And really, that's your best way to get the fee. Once you've done the service, there's less incentive for the person to pay you. If somebody does a lot of recording with you, obviously, I'd probably have a little more behind you going forward than you would someone that just comes in one time to record something. But that's why you want to ask for it first. What accounts receivable is means that you have recorded the instrument and you're billing the person or the company for the recorder fees. This is not in compliance with statute. If you fail to collect on that fee, you could be held personally responsible for those uncollected fees. You are responsible to collect your recording fees as the elected officer, and those are fees due the county. If you fail to collect on those, that could be a charge against you personally for that amount. So that's why do not do accounts receivable. With prepaid, you're collecting the fee in advance of recording the instrument. However, you are collecting more than the fee required. So a company, a firm, an entity, they might pay up front, maybe give you $500. That becomes basically a trust account that you're holding in this individual's name and applying fees as the instruments are recorded. So if they record, 10 documents at $25, to record those, then that's $250. They've used half of what they've given you. Okay. For other government entities, this becomes problematic as they're really not allowed to prepay expenses. So this really is, title companies or private companies or individuals. Okay. If you do prepaids, please be aware that this requires more work in your office because you have to account for and process these prepaid accounts. You need to have a control ledger that shows all of the receipts into the prepaid account. You will also need a subsidiary ledger that shows the amount held for each separate account. And at any given point in time, you should be able to say, I have $6,000 in prepaids and this is who it belongs to. You have to always have those controls in place. Okay. When someone prepays their recording fees, you're not going to include that in your collection of fees for the month because they're not actually applied to fees yet. Okay. Rather, you're going to post these to your control ledger for prepaid accounts. Okay. I don't know if any of the software actually accounts for prepaids, so you may have to keep a manual ledger for your prepaids. I'm not sure how that works in all the counties. But you would post a collection to the subsidiary ledger for that payer. Then each time that person records a document, you would reduce the prepaid control ledger and subsidiary ledger for the fee required for that document to be recorded. And then at that time, you're going to post that to your cash and fee book as a fee collected. At any time, the total of the subsidiary ledger should equal the control ledger. That can be a finding if it is not. Okay. And you should never have any of your prepaid accounts be negative, because if you do, then you're in an accounts receivable position. If they prepay and they send in 10 documents and they only have money to do 5, you need to let them know you need to give me X amount before I'll record these other 5 documents. Don't do it and then bill them. Make sure that you're getting your money up front. And then you're going to need to reconcile your control to your subsidiary ledger. For example, let's say you have 3 accounts and each one has $500. I'm making this as simple as possible for the math. So you're going to have a controller ledger that shows a balance of prepaids of $1,500, and you're going to have 3 subsidiary ledgers, each showing a balance of $500. And at any given time, those 3 subsidiaries added together, 3 500s adds to the 1,500. It's not going to be that simple because it's never going to be those even numbers, but you get the idea. So the amount that you're holding in prepaids, that control balance, should be part of your bank reconcile each month because that's money you are holding. So it is included in your reconcilement. During an audit, we're looking at the operations of your office. For most audits, the audit is done annually. And remember, when we come in to audit 2020, we are looking at your predecessor's records, not yours. We're looking at 2019 or 2020 records in 2021. So they're not records that you posted. You're not responsible for those records. So the first audit is really a good time to relax, ask questions, and learn what you need if anything is to change. Do note, for recorders, we do not audit the recorder's office every year. Those are sometimes cycled in. They might look at your, which you should have uploaded, they might look at your bank reconcilement to make sure that you're keeping up with that, but they may not come in and do an actual test on your cash and fee book. I mean, they might, but they're going to cycle that in, so it may be once every 2 or 3 years instead of every year. When we're auditing, we're looking to make sure that collections are receipted properly, deposits are made timely, bank reconcilements need to be completed monthly, all the receipts have been posted, the charges are appropriate, so you're following your fee schedule. Your records have been retained for audit. What we ask for, you're able to provide. We will have, we already did have your session on monthly uploads, so Ricky went over that with you, what needs to be uploaded each month, and the audit team will pull that in. And like I said, they may go through and make sure that you are reconciling and doing your reconcilement. Those things make sense, and that may be all they do for your office, or they may be contacting you for additional information. If there are any findings, you're going to be notified. They're either going to be a verbal comment, a management letter, which is just to you and your governing board, or a comment, which is a written comment in the report. If there are no written findings, and that's wonderful, that's what you want, then your office is not included in the supplemental audit report, and you wouldn't be included in the exit. And this is a good thing. It just means we did not find anything that needed to be reported. But do bear in mind, we do not look at 100% of transactions during the audit. So there may be issues that are not noticed in a current audit that might be picked up in a subsequent audit. No finding means that we didn't find anything during our audit based on the procedures that we did that needs to be reported. It is not a guarantee that everything you're doing is perfect. It just that we did not find anything that we looked at to be a problem. Due to COVID in 2020, we have learned to do more auditing remotely, and even after the health emergency is over, we're going to continue to do some of these remote auditing. It provides a lot of efficiencies in the audit process, and there's less time that we're actually spending on site, taking up your auditors and treasurers and recorders' time. So I wanted to bring some of these procedures to your attention. First, with the uploads. Again, Vicky's already gone over this, but before we even start with the audit, they have access to these uploads. They can look at it and see if you're not uploading anything or what you're uploading is not reconciled, that's going to make you higher risk for having an audit of your department. So it is something we look at. We will communicate through phone or email or video chats if we can't come in person to see you. If you have not provided the requested uploads, you may receive a direct request, and Ricky went over that as well, to upload specific information. If you receive a direct request and you know you've already uploaded the information, reach out to the field examiner. It's possible they're not aware, or it could have been that what you uploaded was missing information that they need, and they can explain that to you. Please acknowledge any requests that you receive, even if you need more time to gather the information. If you don't know who is sending you the information, like a direct request may not have your FE's name on it, you can usually find out either through the auditor, or if they don't know, you can always contact Ricky and I. We can look up who's been assigned to at least get you in touch with the lead auditor on that. As I mentioned once or twice, the longer time that you let pass when your records are not reconciled, the more difficult it becomes to reconcile. The harder it is to find what's wrong and get it corrected. So please do not hesitate to reach out to us if you have issues with reconciling. Again, we can't actually do your reconcilement for you, but we can help you work through the process, maybe see something that you don't that will assist you, and the sooner the better. Again, if you find out that you haven't reconciled for the last 4 years of your predecessor's term, it's going to be very difficult because that's a lot of records to look through, and that's probably not something that we're going to be able just to scan and go, oh yeah, there it is, any more than you are. But we can start working through it and trying to look for those things. You can email us, send us a copy of what you're looking at. Again, the more details we have, the better we are able to try to identify those variances. We do want to be a resource to you. So even if you just want to troubleshoot, like I said, or brainstorm, or find out, I've done this step and this step, what do I do next? Don't hesitate to call. And before we do questions, I am going to go over, stop sharing. I'm going to go over that bank rec and see if I can do that without. Let me move my little squares off. Okay. So this is a sample bank reconcilement. Again, this is not a prescribed form. This is just a way you can do it. Again, it shows you the theory of what we're talking about. As I said, you start with the bank balance that's on your bank statement. So, whatever, First National Bank and the account number there, and then what that shows as of your balance. It says March 31st. It could be December 31st, whatever month you're doing that reconcilement for, you take that number off of there. Okay, and then you start looking for those differences. So for in this example, they posted $10 in interest. Well, you haven't posted that to your record yet. You're trying to come to your record balance, so you're going to back that out. You're going to remove that $10 because you don't have it posted yet. And again, we're not talking about correcting errors here. We're talking about trying to make sure that you've identified the differences between your balance and between the bank balance and the record balance. And again, you have deposits in transit. So that's $166 that you have posted to your records that the bank has not received yet. So you're going to add that back in. They're going to credit it in a day or two, but that's not included in that balance. Outstanding checks. There was $100 you wrote that haven't cleared yet. So you're going to subtract that out because when they clear, it's going to reduce that balance. If there was a fee, a service charge, and again, you haven't posted that, that's something you're going to actually add back in until you post it. If you have an NSF check, again, again, that's where your records show. If you haven't voided it out, then your records are showing that you've collected, in this case, $100, and the bank's saying, no, we don't have that $100. So you're going to make that adjustment. And again, if there are credit card receipts, these are going to be the same as deposits in transit. They're just credit card payments that are made at the end of the month. You should have a detailed listing of what payments you accepted, and you're going to be tracing those to when they actually received that. And so when you go through and make those adjustments, you're going to come to an adjusted bank balance. So all of these variances are applied to this bank balance, coming to an adjusted bank balance. And then you are going to compare that to how much money you have in your fund. If you do not have prepaids, this is just the amount that you've collected that you have not settled yet. If you have prepaids, it's going to include that, your fees collected that you have not turned over to the county, and any prepaid counts you have. So you need to make sure, however your county does it, that you include those in the bank reconcilement, because you have to account for everything that you are holding. Okay. And then again, if you have an outstanding check, hopefully, again, it's not to the county, because they should be depositing those checks within a couple of days of when within a day of when they receive it. But if you've refunding, or if somebody had a prepaid account and they're no longer, go out of business and they want their money back or something, and you're refunding that, those checks may take a little bit longer to clear, so they could be there. Deposits in transit, again, you're going to have a list of those, and those should clear, the first of the next month, so they should be on the very next bank statement. Okay. So now I will see if anybody has any questions.
Okay. I am going to give you back control of your cameras and your microphones so that you can ask any questions that you may have, or just introduce yourself. What you got? Or to say how great Lori did on her presentation. A thumbs up. As accountants, we love reconciling. It's a puzzle. It's fun to watch everything fit in its place. So hopefully you'll find that same excitement.
It is a wonderful feeling when you get it reconciled.
It is, isn't it?
It really is.
We got to thank you for your time. We appreciate that. Somebody turn the camera on. I'm going to wave.
Hello. Hi, ladies. How are you?
Good. Okay.
I had a question about the reconciling. So I do a tape when I reconcile for both bank statements, and then I just print out the tape, and then I put that kind of like the cashier's tape, and then I just clip that onto the bank statement to show that I reconciled, and I do that every month. Is that what needs to be uploaded now in Gateway to show the reconciliation?
Yeah, the reconcilement would need to be uploaded. Do you label the tape? I mean, do you say this is outstanding checks, this is
yes.
whatever it is?
Yes. So I start with the beginning bank balance, then whatever is in transit, and then it equals the end bank balance. And then once that happens, and I just staple it onto the bank statement for the month to show that the reconcilement, happened, basically. Does that need to be included on the upload for Gateway?
What's your ledger?
I haven't before. My ledger, I do everything on Excel. So each month I have like a pretty lengthy Excel sheet with all of the deposits, any NSF checks, all of the credit card amounts for each day.
So are you posting to that daily? That's your daily record that you're posting to?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're not just taking straight from the bank statement and posting to the Excel. You are doing the actual transactions as they come in and take place.
I put all of the transactions, so I get all the deposit slips, and then I put all the deposits on there to compare the deposit slips to the bank statement, and then make sure that's they all even out. Same thing with the credit cards. Same thing with the IRS, ACHs, and then any NSF checks. So that's my ledger. I put everything in on Excel.
Does it have a balance?
Yes.
So you're running a balance with that in Excel as well?
Yes.
Okay. So really, I mean, what I'm hearing, and I might be mistaken, you really need to start with your ending bank balance and you're reconciling to your ending ledger balance.
Yes.
Those two.
Yes, that's what I do as well every month, but then just to kind of show that, yes, everything balanced is when I run that tape, and then I just staple the tape onto the bank statement.
Okay, so we want the reconcilement between the ledger and the bank.
Okay.
That's the reconcilement we want to see. So whatever you're doing in that fashion is what you should be uploading into Gateway.
Okay, that makes sense. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
No problem. And I forget, what county are you from?
Lake.
Right there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying. I remembered your name.
I know you ladies have a lot to keep track of, so no problem.
Well, you know, you guys change every few years. So it's like, oh, they're not there anymore. It's so-and-so. Or
Yeah.
Well, welcome. I'm glad that you're there.
Thank you. I am too. Thank you.
How about, I want to say it's Letta. No, Lada? Lita. Dang it.
We did this last time.
I knew we was the long A, right?
Long E.
Long E, I mean. I gotcha. I'm there. I apologize. Well, I think you guys are done for this month. I am working on putting together February's schedule of sessions. Again, it's a little bit more sporadic. It's not as kind of heavy loaded as January was, but we wanted to get that information to you this month. We knew that was very important. So February, we're going to talk about some processes. I think claims process is a big one that we're talking about. I'm just working on that as we are now. I know Secretary of State's putting together a video for us. We could not coordinate a date. She is extremely busy. She tried. We tried for December. We tried for February, and it just wasn't going to happen. So she has graciously decided to record a video for us. We're trying to determine where to show that. I don't think we'll do a separate session. I think we'll show it with another session because it probably won't be more than 15 or 20 minutes, I'm guessing at this point. I don't have that video. But she did want to welcome you all and be a part of that. So I look forward to that coming. I am planning on having it all outlined. Schedule session will go out next week at some point. I am waiting to confirm a few things before I can put that out. But I will send out another mass email to everybody. I'll let them know that it's available. It'll be available on our website as well. I will attach it in the email too. I'd like for you to have it in both places. And everything will run the same way. So we'll throw packets up the week prior, and then the recordings will go underneath those packets, so you'll be able to go back and review these. As of now, February will be the end of our newly elected, and then you guys will roll over into our, really just our traditional training sessions. So they're a little bit deeper. We do dig a little bit, a little bit more into that. So look forward to that. And I'm not sure, the dates or anything as of yet. For what we've got moving forward. So be on the lookout, get with your association on stuff like that as well. And I think that's all the information I have. Lori, am I missing anything?
I don't think so. I think that's it.
Well, we really appreciate you guys tuning in. If you don't have anything else, we will let you go have some lunch because I'm hungry. All right, ladies, have a wonderful day. We'll see you later.
Thank you.